Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Lissa Zanville from Los Angeles, and she speaks on executive director of large nonprofit organizations. She talks about change, encouraging the community. She's also active in the LA Trial Lawyers Charities. So it's going to be a really fascinating conversation around community change, nonprofits, fundraising, and I'm really happy to have her on to share her expertise. So, Lissa, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, you have a really interesting background, and we've worked with a lot of big corporations, Toyota, Microsoft, Los Angeles. Talk about how you got started, what you do, and we'll dive right into the questions.
I've always been interested in public service in some form or another, even as a teenager. I worked on political campaigns because of my heart and I want to help people. And then I focused from politics to government and from government into the corporate world, which was not as different as one would think. It's just looking at from a different perspective. What is the benefit to the corporation as well as to public service? And then from there, I started my own business for a long time doing media training and working with companies like Toyota and a lot of sports. I don't know why, but a lot of sports. And then became very involved in nonprofits. First, I worked for a cancer foundation for about 10 years. And then I came to Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Charities, which being the best job I've ever had, the hardest job I've ever had, and the most rewarding I've ever had. So it's been a culmination of all my experience into one fantastic job. And I don't even think of it as a job.
Yeah, it sounds like sounds like talking to the different, yes, it sounds like they've had a very successful career and then they poured into something. I know a lot of people become media entrepreneurs, and it looks like you're very active in this area with activism and nonprofits. We'll just start it off. And one thing is just looking at your experience across, you got public, private sectors, nonprofit. How have your past roles shaped your approach to leadership and activism? How is it changing? Because I know, the previous guests were just talking about generational differences, like Gen Z responds differently than Gen Xers and boomers. So what changes are you seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of change. First of all, people are looking at how is this going to affect me? For example, we always talk about having extra income or disposable income all the time. And I think the generation today is looking at disposable time. And they want to know where is the best benefit for them to spend their time, because you're competing against everything in their lives. And in the past what I found working for a corporation was probably the most educational for me, because I also saw it from both sides. It's got to be a win-win situation for the people to give up their time and their money. And why is it a benefit to them? And whether it's a company or an individual. We do a lot of volunteer service. I'd say half of our work is giving financially to nonprofits throughout Los Angeles. That's what Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Charities does. What we do is we give financial grants, and we've given out over almost $6 million. I think this year we're going to hit $6 million. And then we also donate our time. And since we've started tracking the time in about 2015, it's been over 12,000 hours worth of time. So to compete with people and their time is a big thing. And you have to give people something that will make them feel good and that it's worth their time, worth their finances. And that's the challenge today, especially with younger people, because they work at home. So there's that all kind of unfortunate flexibility because they're really at work 24/7. So you want to compete to get them away from work and what substitute for them and what benefits they'll get from it.
Really interesting. I love that because there was a recent movie I watched where it's talking about basically the currency was time. So it's like if you had 100 years, you're considered a millionaire versus if you had an hour. And it's just interesting what people did to get more time. And in our society, it's like, what is your income? What is your net worth? How do you use your time to get money? Which brings me to my next question is this, for running how do this collaboration between nonprofits in communities where you address issues, really important things like education, healthcare, homelessness, support for abuse survivors. What are your thoughts?
Well, you have to look at the big picture. First of all, Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Charities, we have 5 silos, so to speak: education, children, survivors of abuse, persons with disabilities, and homelessness. And we also focus on Los Angeles County. Fluctuates as to where your money goes, depending on what's happening in your community. So you have to look at it on a global, where your globe is the community. Los Angeles has always been considered the epicenter of homelessness. So, of course, that's going to be a focus of our financial and our time grants, so to speak. A couple of weeks ago, we did something called a Day of Dignity for the unhoused in the Hollywood area, which is really a hard-hit area. And we were able to provide mobile not just the services and stuff that people think of giving to the unhoused. We did mobile showers, haircuts, chiropractors, manicures, pet care, which was the most popular area was pet care. And then also things like having what we called a clothing store, where people donated gently used clothing, and it was rack after rack of clothes that were gone by the 3 hours of the event. So you have to look at your community and say, where am I going to have the most impact? You can't just throw dollars at a problem. You have to really focus on what it is. So maybe one year we may be giving more to the unhoused and dealing with homelessness. Another time we may be dealing with domestic violence and survivors of abuse. A lot of it's connected, but a lot of it is you have to look at the whole picture. I've always used this phrase, even when I was in the corporate world and in PR, that's what I did a lot of. Think globally, act locally. What's out there in the world and where can I make a difference? And we're very particular about how we spend our money, and we want to make a difference. We don't just sponsor events for one of our nonprofits, or where the money, a lot of it may go to paying for the dinner. We want to pay it directly to whatever problem it is, and how can we make a difference?
Interesting. The other question I have for you is this idea of fundraising, and what is for example, you can give people a handout, but they could, if you give them money or whatever, it could get misspent. But if you actually give them like tools and resources, so what's your idea of this idea of giving money versus teaching people how to fish?
My mother-in-law was very involved in an organization that was their motto, to teach somebody to fish rather than give something individually. So we do look very hard at where we can, as I said, make a difference. And part of that is we have 3 signature events that we do. In addition to the way our model is, I'll backtrack a little bit. Our model is that we give grants every year. And those grants can be, because we're a pass-through nonprofit, it can be anywhere from $50,000 total to $500,000. Depends on what we raise, what we use our funds for total. So we do direct giving, but we also do monthly service projects, and it could be as simple as hand and giving food at a group called MEND, Meet Each Need with Dignity. Twice a week, they give out food and groceries to 600 families. So we'll just be there giving out, being part of the volunteer group. And then we have 3 what we call signature events. And those are strictly LATLC events that we're in charge of. And we are very particular on those 3 events. One I mentioned was the Day of Dignity, which was for the unhoused. Then one of them is called the Great Trike Giveaway, where we've specifically raised money for adaptive tricycles for children with disabilities. And it actually was the first event I ever went to for LATLC. And I said, if they're all like this, I'm either going to be sitting in the car crying or I'm going to be high as a kite for the rest of the day because of how good it was. And you see these kids trading in a wheelchair to a new set of wheels and being able to play with their siblings or their friends and being part of the, I don't want to say normal, but the world that they see around them that sometimes they may not feel that they're a part of. So the Great Trike Giveaway is a fantastic event that we do. And as a side note, as the kids are getting adjustments on their bikes, idle hands are the devil's playground. We have 50, 60 volunteers who show up. So we assemble 1,000 toiletry kits for the unhoused in LA and in Orange County because we partner with our sister group in Orange County. So that's the second of our signature events. Our third signature event is what I'm working on. This morning, I got up at 5 o'clock this morning, which is normal, and I'm buying toys because we do a huge giveaway of groceries and toys to 500 families in South Central Los Angeles, which is the poorest area in the city. We partner with the Newton Police Department, and they select 500 families that are really in need. And we put on this huge holiday event. Santa on a fire truck, snow falling, all kinds of stuff. It's another one of those events that just, boom, they just make you feel so good.
Interesting. Yeah, really, I loved how you're basically, it's this idea of giving them man to fish versus teaching them how to fish. Next question I have for you is, especially with pandemic and a lot of businesses and charities and organizations had to pivot, what things have you done? What creative methods did you implement to keep the success going as well as keep events engaging?
I have to say, I am so proud of this organization. We basically did not skip a beat, and I'll go through how we did pivot during the pandemic. The first thing we realized, there's going to be no fundraisers. We're not going to be able to do any in-person. Let me characterize it. No in-person fundraisers. So what did we do? It was our 15th anniversary. Someone said, let's do a tribute book and we'll sell ads and we'll ship them out to the 3,000 people who support us, which we did, and we raised more money net than we normally do. So we were still able to give out grants that year because that was a year that nonprofits needed it the most, number one. So the grant side, we took care of with a tribute book. Then we give out scholarships every year. So here are kids who are getting no prom, no grad night, no nothing, and we're not going to give them scholarships. So what did we do? We did virtual poker tournament, and we raised enough, which I'm not sure is legal, but we were able to give out the grants that we would normally give for scholarships. Then we get to comfort and joy. How are we going to pay for that? And how are the families going to get the items that we are going to do? We were able to raise money through donations. People supported the idea of comfort and joy, which is the holiday giving. And working with the police department, the Monday that we were going to fill bags of items was lockdown. That's when they locked it down in Los Angeles. So what do? There's $50,000 worth of items, toys, groceries, all kinds of stuff at the police department. I cannot say more kind words about the Newton Police Department. They became what they called patrol car Santas. And what did they do? They personally spent December driving to families and delivering the items that they needed. So even though there was the pandemic going on, we had to pivot. Believe me, we pivoted. we never stopped giving in the ways that we planned on giving in 2019, in 2020.
Interesting. Yeah, I know we have around 2 minutes remaining and end it out. What are some of the key elements for running and I love your passion. What are some of the key elements to running a successful nonprofit? What advice would you give to someone looking to start one? And then how can people find you and learn more about the Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Charities?
First, I'm going to give you my website. It's latlc.org. That's latlc.org. There are buttons where you could volunteer. We take anybody as a volunteer, and a button to donate. And we will take anybody's money to donate because it's expensive to do this. Number two, to start a nonprofit, and I get this a lot, people saying, I have this idea and I want to see it to fruition. First, find your passion. When I used to do media training, I would draw this rectangle. And I would say, that rectangle is filled with everything in the world, everything you're supposed to remember. And then I would color in a little square in the right-hand corner. And I said, that's what you feel passionate about, and that's what you should talk about. So whatever you feel passionate about, that's what you should be involved in. Whether you volunteer, you spend your time, you donate, whatever it is, find your passion.
Mm. I love that. And like I said, your passion comes out. And then the other thing is, especially the younger generation, Gen Z and millennials, they will basically forego a traditional to be passionate and to pursue things that they believe in, whether it's the environment, whether it's rights, whatever they believe in, so really love that. And thanks so much and for coming on and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.